Welcome to So You Want to Join the C-Suite, a monthly podcast based on our ILTACON 2025 panel. This series takes you inside the realities of law firm leadership. Each month, we dig into the messy, behind-the-scenes side of executive life and share unfiltered stories about what it takes to lead at the top. Today, we are discussing title envy, the myths, motivations, and missteps of leadership ambition, and why the C-Suite isn't what you think. Our panelists, as usual, are Jim McKenna, CIO of Fenwick and West, Skip Lohmeyer, CIO of Parker Poe Adams and Bernstein, Michael Bruckner, CIO at Duane Morris, Adam Kane, COO and CTO of Hooper Law Office, and I'm Stacey Graff, CEO of Federate Legal. Everyone wants the title until they realize what comes with it.
Mhm.
Jim, when you first aimed for the C-suite, what drew you to it, and how has that motivation aged over time?
One question. I wanted to become an executive from a very early age, and I think it was predicated on a number of things. The folks that I idolized when I was younger were quote unquote bosses, and I saw people leading others, and I had a lot of experience with team sports. And I had perspectives on what was effective coaching and what was effective management and that type of thing. And I wanted to get into a position where I could make a difference and I could work with people and we could have a group create value and deliver things that were greater than what we could have done individually. That was my honest to goodness motivation. And over the course of time, that has remained 100% accurate. And it's also been added with a couple of other things. It can be a heck of a lot of work. And there's more people in the organization than just your team. And sometimes people are all working towards the same goal, but not necessarily working with each other and figuring out how to figure out those friction points and what you can do to minimize them or capitalize upon somebody else's success or what they can do to, marry with your efforts and such. Those were all challenges. One of the other things I had no idea is how much communication has to happen before the meeting about the thing that you're going to do. I used to think that you'd go to the meetings and decisions were made. Oftentimes, the decisions made outside of the room. That was a skill that I had to learn as well. So there was a number of things that I got wrong. My motivations were accurate, and they still are accurate. And my greatest definition of success is when I can see a group of people knock it out of the park. I think that's awesome.
So was the C-suite experience what you expected, or was the reality a bit of a surprise?
It was both. So on the one hand, from a professional and personal accomplishment perspective, it felt great. I got it. I broke through that barrier, and it's hard. Or at least it was hard for me. And I felt a great sense of accomplishment. A couple of things that I was really, really surprised is once you are quote unquote the person, you inherit the past, whether you created it or not. It's now your job to make oh, I see nodding heads. Great. I'm not alone on that. You, you are now responsible for everything that has happened since the beginning of time and forever forward. So there's that. I used to think, or I once thought that when I got into the position, okay, we would set forth a plan. I didn't realize how many plans were already in flight. And when I was introduced to the role, not only was it expected, it's kind of like getting a football handed off to you. Okay, run that way. The play's already been called. The ball's already been hiked. Everybody's in motion. Now you got to score, that type of thing. And it took a while to work through a variety of projects before I actually got to the opportunity to start planning a project with others about the future. My immediacy of my role, I had a solid year and a half before we got to the point where I actually felt like I was putting my thumb on the scale on things that I thought were important material and needed to be done. All of those type of activities. So that was a surprise. Another surprise that I had was just because you're the boss doesn't necessarily mean that you get respect on day one. People will be polite, but there's a phase where you have to prove yourself. And initially, in my humble opinion, initially, you are trying to show folks that they haven't made a mistake. You are looking for opportunities, both passively and purposely, to demonstrate that you have skills and that this is a seat that you can maintain. This is a seat that you can expand upon, that you can do great things and you can bring value to the organization. But that takes a while. And if you see a movie and somebody has a great idea once and they're all of a sudden respected and enjoyed by everybody, that has not been my reality. It was a series of bullet points in a row where folks had a perspective of, oh, okay, here's the consistency, here's the type of character, here's what we can expect, here's what they're like on a good day versus a not so good day, here's what they're like under pressure, here's what happens when things haven't gone according to plan, here's what happens when we got to drop everything and fix something that nobody intended to break, that type of thing. And then folks get a perspective impressive on you. I've used that word a lot. And it takes a moment, and then you realize, oh, you are now respected. You are now valued. It feels like you've been here for a while, even if it hasn't been a tremendous amount of time. So that was all very, very different.
I've heard people say that like if I just had the title, if I just had the role, then I could get stuff done. And it's like, oh, that's not been my experience.
Been my experience. And another challenge, and I'm sure our panelists will talk about this as well. It's one thing to be accepted by your peers and the people who have hired you. I mean, you got the job. Now you have to earn your way into all of those conversations. It's another thing to walk into a team of people. In my particular case, I had 50 new direct reports. They didn't know me from Adam, no pun intended, Adam Kane. And there was a moment of we all have to get used to each other. And whatever I brought to the table varied in differences from a little to a lot from the past. Not in a good way, not in a bad way, just different. We all had to get used to each other. What's it mean when we say this? What's the new vernacular? When we say the deadline has to be met, is that an aspiration or a something that is something that will occur unless a conversation occurs that we're not going to meet the deadline? I happen to fall more into the camp of deadlines matter, that type of thing. It just takes a moment for everybody to kind of find their footing and start waltzing together.
Yeah. So I want to move over to Skip. Skip, what are the wrong reasons you've seen people chase the executive title? I talked about, I mentioned that I'll be able to get stuff done if I have the title, but how do you see those motivations usually play out?
Great question. So I don't think of it as necessarily a particular wrong reason. For the most part, I would guess most of us had multiple reasons why we were seeking the top tier role of our department or function. So you may have multiple reasons. So I'd frame it as a concern of if you have particular reasons as your chief motivator, like what Jim was talking about, what was his motivation to become C-suite? It's certain motivators can make the job a heck of a lot easier or harder, more or less enjoyable, and they can make it impossible to fulfill the job successfully. So, for example, maybe you're seeking the authorities. Stacey, you kind of touched on this when you're talking about you just wanted to get in there because you felt like you could just do it. You can't embrace this role unless you're equally yoked with responsibility. The C-suite, as Jim mentioned, I mean, it's the end. The buck stops with you. Ownership is of everything. So everything that exists before, during, and after, it's your responsibility, your ownership. So you have to be very authentic to the services and the people that you're with. Otherwise, if you don't have equal yoke of authority and responsibility, I mean, it's going to start fracturing the staff and the relationships and the trust that's been built, maybe with your prior role or with the existing department itself. Another chief motivator, if it was too heavily weighted, is you're chasing the prestige or the recognition. This title, you are responsible, but the wins often are invisible. Far fewer moments of applause in this role. It often takes years to achieve the end result of whatever the initiative was. Versus if you're a project manager, you see a beginning and end. Sometimes you get immediate wins, within days, weeks. At the help desk, you get them within hours, minutes sometimes of those applauding wins, a satisfied customer. At the chief level, it can take years to get some of those achievements. So the weight of this role feels a lot heavier if recognition is your chief motivator. Another one, I think it probably is important to mention, is compensation. If you're too heavily focused on compensation being your chief motivator, there's nothing wrong with wanting to provide a quality income for you and your family, but money alone won't sustain you for those long, arduous, demanding cycles of work that you see in this role. So the work-life balance is much more blended and not separated as the work and your outside of work life. PTO in this role, It's I think it's kind of a, you could say you're taking PTO days, but oftentimes you're just working out of the office, maybe a little less than normal, but you're certainly working. Holidays and weekends, it's often at some level of work, or at least awareness of what's going on at work during holidays and weekends. And the larger the firm, the more time zones you're in. I mean, it just can be relentless at times. So responsibility for this role, it never pauses. So if you're just chasing the dollars, boy, it's going to get really hard. And without deeper purpose, I think your comp driven motivation will just lead to burnout. And then probably the last thing I thought of was, and this is probably more in line with what we were talking about, Stacey, is I could do it all better and I could do it immediately if I'm given the reins.
Yeah.
And I would caution that coming in hot leads to serious resistance and often can shorten somebody's tenure in that role. And maybe some of you have seen, probably all of us on this call have seen firsthand an executive who got into a role and just started changing a bunch of things. And it caused cultural and historical conflicts. And if you don't, if you're not very careful with that, I mean, you're going to end up with some serious problems and shorten your tenure there. So the successful executives, I think they listen first, and then they diagnose second, and then they act third. So I think if you concentrate on that and make sure your motivator isn't just I'm here to do it better than the last guy, but you do it carefully. You can do it better than the last person, but you got to do it with that listen, diagnose, and act in that order. The job is less about the spotlight and more about the load on your shoulders and the deliverables that you're responsible for. So your reasons why you want to be in the C-suite, they have to carry that load. So the question you might want to ask yourself if you're looking for a C-suite is, will your motivation sustain you when the days are long and the visibility is absent and the responsibility grows significantly heavier over time or during those deep cycles of work?
What you said about the accolades, and them being long term, if at all, really hits home for me because I think there's a lot more. You get all of the blame and none of the credit for anything that happens a lot of the time. So if you're going into it looking for um, accolades and credit and attaboys, that's few and far between in the C-suite roles. Most people will tell you when things are going wrong and then assume that no news is good news when things are going right.
Yeah, part of the servant leadership trend that kind of hit a few years ago, something that resonated me was you're there to make your bosses and your customers look good. You're there to make your team look really good. It's not about yourself, it's about the others. And if you have that as a chief motivator, I think that will carry you pretty far and endure with that deeper responsibility and motivation.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're looking for credit, if you're looking, you know, to make yourself look good in this role, it's going to be a challenge.
Yep.
So Michael, looking back,
Mhm.
what did you invest your energy in that turned out not to matter as much as you thought it would?
Well, so I love this question, and it feels counterintuitive to say it out loud, so hopefully nobody gets mad at me. But the honest truth is, at least in my role, my technical skill set, I sort of built, you build a career being a highly trained technical resource, right? And at least you moved up into various different roles and was a subject matter expert. I was the guy that knew the answer all the time, right? And I quickly realized after getting the job that that didn't really matter as much anymore. I think when I'm presenting to the partnership, trying to get consensus on something, um, they don't want me to be in the weeds technically, right? I need to be in the weeds to keep my team focused and honest, right? And be able to um, manage that piece of my job where I have to keep the lights on, right? But keeping the lights on is a baseline expectation now. It's not the thing that gets me anywhere, right? The thing that gets me somewhere is um, like creating a differentiator by figuring out how to forget the technical details, frankly, and then focus on things like risk and revenue and from the partnership perspective, right? And then for my team, figuring out how to remove roadblocks, right? Get things out of the way so that they can achieve an outcome. So it took me a minute to stop trying to position myself as the smartest technical resource in the room and really focus on um, the softer skills, right? The how do I think about things in a way that tie it to the business need or tie it to a business risk or tie it to an outcome, right? So I think that's probably it for me.
Yeah, coming up in finance, communication skills were not really emphasized in
Yeah.
my career plan. So I really radically underestimated how important, like Jim was talking about, the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting, that where the decisions actually get made, and the amount of time and energy that goes into that rather than explaining financial data.
Right. I mean, it's 100%. It's the whole idea. It's the influence without authority, right? Like we
Mhm.
all we all face this in our various different roles, right? Inside of firms, I can, coming up through various leadership positions inside any organization, law firm, being unique a little bit, I guess, but uh, you start to develop authority, right? But and so you can compel people to do things, right? If I had a team of people and we need to get to an outcome, right? You can um, because you're in a position, you're in a leadership position over them, excuse me, right? You to a certain extent you can compel them to do it, right? Um, but I think we all know you can't compel a partnership to do anything, right? You need to develop that skill set or that helps you build influence when you don't really have authority over people, right? And so um, I think that I definitely underestimated how much consensus building I would need to do before I got in the room. As Jim said, right, the decisions aren't made in the room, and that was sometimes very eye-opening for me. And so those conversations where you sit down with the skeptics, right? A skeptical partner, skeptical associate, skeptical, administrative business unit owner, whatever the insert any title you want to, right? And you hear them out, you understand their concern, right? If it's a concern about a piece of software or technical workflow or whatever the case may be, and work through that with them, right? And you get that consensus. And so then when you're in the room, already you've got the consensus, right? And so there's a sort of switch that flips because it also gives you, I think, more confidence when you're sitting in the room, right? So
Mhm.
understanding that you know, you've whipped the votes, right? You've gotten the support that you need, and you can sit and have the conversation in a room full of people where you've got the key support. I mean, that's major, and that was an important lesson for me to learn too.
I think that's one of the special things about law firms too, is the need to build consensus before the decision. I have the impression that in other types of organizations, a decision is made and then the change management and the consensus is built, whereas in law
Yeah.
firms, you got to do it ahead of time.
I mean, it's such a unique like ownership and leadership structure, right? Every law firm they may be structured a little bit different under the covers, right? With the nuts and bolts of it. But at the end of the day, whatever the size of the partnership is, that's the size of the people that you need to get consensus from. And I don't know that how common that is in other industries.
Yeah. Okay, so Adam, if someone told you today that they wanted to be a CTO or a COO someday, what would you ask them to see if they're ready for what it really means?
I mean, it is probably something that's already been said in this conversation, to be honest. Um, you know, to Michael's point, I think what's really important is to ask somebody or to get a feel for and not politics, but how do they feel about politicking? Because one of the things that I couldn't agree more with is if you walk into a room without knowing what the answer is, you've already lost the room. You need to know what the answer is before you walk into that meeting. And you need to know who's on your side or who's against you. And it's not about, these could be really small decisions, really big decisions, but having that plan in place is really important. I come from a highly technical background as well. You may already know the answer, and you have to be okay not telling somebody the answer because you have to be able to give up that authority and that expertise to somebody else on your team. So there's this cook versus chef parable that I learned a long time ago, which was about if you can leave the kitchen, will the food burn? So are you okay? Do you trust somebody else to do the thing that you do? Will you be able to put faith in somebody else to do the work that you're currently doing now? Knowing where somebody feels or falls on the ability to allow somebody else to take over is really important. If somebody has an ultimate level of the need for control, this is not for them. This role isn't for them. This field isn't for them. It doesn't matter, I guess, what field you're in, but being in a leadership role, if that's the motivation to be in control, then this isn't going to work because you have to trust the people in your charge to do the work and to be successful and to know it's not always going to be successful and to have this level set that if it doesn't work out, you can respond to it in a measured sort of way. Because what also happens is individuals get way too excited and they try to just come up with these, you can't start blaming people, you can't start pointing fingers. You have to be able to be the individual in the room that calms it down, that sort of says to everybody, hey, just take a breath, let's figure it out. Whatever the situation is, important, not important, you have to be the one that everybody looks to for guidance. If you are unable to do that, then this position really isn't for you. I've seen it happen way too many times in my past careers and even in my current career, and even recently, just a couple days ago, where something happened, right? Everybody got really excited about it, and we had to sort of take a step back and think, is this really the end of the world? Is this really that critical? And I think I've said this before. I think I said it in the last episode.
Yeah.
Some things are that important, some things are not. But if you are the type of person who can't sort of step back from something, take a big picture view and allow and trust others to solve problems, and you have to be in that granular control all the time, then this definitely isn't going to be the position for you.
I mean, the power to delegate, the ability to delegate and leverage the resources, I think it's critical. I think that's a really good place to start because if you have to have your fingers in it, if you have to be micromanaging everything, you're not going to be successful in a leadership role.
There's definitely a level of understanding the core content of what it is that you're leading, right? I think having the ability to conceptualize what people are telling you to sort of weed out the BS, because that happens at time to time, right? You get individuals in roles that they try to cover up maybe some of the mistakes they made. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is radical honesty, just taking ownership and saying, look, if you screwed up, it's okay. But part of that is culture building and making sure people understand it's okay. As leaders, we have to tell people it's okay. We have to show them it's okay, that if they make a mistake, we'll figure it out together. And it's not the end of the world. If you as a leader can't do that with your team, they're never going to want to come to you and tell you when they made a mistake. And they're going to try to cover it up. They're going to try to hide it. They'll try to BS their way through it. The old, if you can't convince them, confuse them, So you have to at least have the ability to understand the content, but you have to put your faith and trust in people. And that's a balance. And sometimes
Yeah.
it's easy, sometimes it's hard.
Yeah. Hard on the problem, not the person, right? That's
Correct. Well, 95% of the time. But if you get to the point where you have to be hard on the person, then the person is the problem. And so therefore you're back to the hard on the problem, not the person.
So I've been dying to ask this question. And this is for everyone. Have you
Mm.
seriously thought about walking away from leadership?
Yes.
Never.
I have. I'm gonna go make soap or something. Deal with any of this.
So I'll speak for myself. There have been times where I have thought about it, whether that was in my current role, past roles, in wherever I've been. There have been times I have thought about it, and there are actually times that I did. And then the moment I do, I'm sucked right back into it. I think if this is something that's got a calling for you,
Yeah.
you just see things in a way that makes sense for you, that drive you to be to be a better person. Like for me, I started in this path because I saw people before me do such a terrible job at it. That's not to say they were terrible people. They just didn't understand how to lead. They didn't understand how to put the humanity in the role that we do, and to make sure people felt acknowledged, cared about, and they were able to do the jobs that we hired them to do. I had some really terrible bosses. Also, I never wanted that to be people underneath me to feel that way. And so there have been times when I've been in positions where other people have been given opportunities to step up and lead, which is, by the way, a great book. I recommend Step Up and Lead. It's a book for the fire service, but if you get a chance, read it. It's a great read. And I've seen them not be able to handle that. And so I've sort of had to step back in because
Mhm.
I don't want to see others suffer because somebody else isn't doing their job. So,
So I responded with a yes, and I'm going to go so far as to say that if anybody tells you that they haven't, I'm going to say that they're fibbing because some days are hard. And some days you have problems at work. We're all people. You have problems outside of work. You've got problems with things that you're interested in. You got problems with your family, et cetera, et cetera. And the maximum coincident peak demand of your ability to solve everybody's problems will be greater than what you can actually do. You're going to experience that in your life sooner or later. And those days are really, really hard. There's a lot of upside to the role as well. We've been talking for the last half hour about the concerns of the position. In some regards, the flip side of it is true as well. There is a compensation concern that is nice. You've done a good job. You can see the fruits of your labor. Other people have recognized it. That's nice. If you have the experience of something wasn't right and you've made it right, okay, you can draw that line in the sand and say, here's where my influence occurred. And that feels good. When you get that one day of the year. So 364 days of the year, if you're in IT, you're being told, here's what needs to be fixed. And the definition of success would be something that we haven't done yet. One day of the year when you have your performance review and you read some words and you go, wow, that was really, really nice. I mean, there's some upsides there. So, your ego can get stroked a little bit. It's quiet, in my opinion. But the pressure's there, and there are times where we need breaks. And Skip so eloquently stated this, and I just wanted to double down on this particular part. You can be away from the office, but you're never away from the office. And if you don't have that mentality and you can't develop that mental perspective, this job will be consuming. But if you can segment your mind in such a way, and to Adam's point, when you can delegate and trust the folks that you can delegate, for example, I've got an anniversary coming up. I'm going to be off the clock that night. In my household, that's a holy day of obligation, and I'm going to honor it. And we're going to be just fine. And when I come back the next day, whatever is not fine, we'll make fine then, and it'll be fine. But you got to have a team to do that, and it takes a little while to build a team, and it takes a little while for you to get instantiated and all that type of stuff. But when you're there, okay, you can have an anniversary.
It's my team that keeps bringing me back too. It's the people that I work with, the people that, we've built the relationship, we've built some level of codependency. And the idea of abandoning them, abandoning what we're doing together, I can't do it.
I think of project management. There's no better time to cut bait on a project and just end the project is when you realize, when it becomes crystal clear that it will not give you the return on investment that was originally intended. But you're right. No one wants to abandon a project. They just want to hold on to it forever. So when you ask that question, have I ever thought about walking away? My mind wants to say, no. But the reality is there have been times um, where not at my current role, of course, but there have been times when other pressures have made me think, do I need to walk away? Is this the
Mhm.
time to walk away? Um, And it may be, you have to think about it's not just your role, as Jim said. I mean, you got your family to consider, you have maybe other volunteer roles that you do, maybe it's other things you do for the community. Um, and there are times when if the load on your shoulder becomes an impossible weight to bear, then you might have to tighten that circle up. It may mean that you have to, even though you don't want to, shed some of those other things that aren't as important. And having a foundation where you have prioritized what is most critical in your life, faith, family, job, career, whatever those are, you have to fall back on that hierarchy of where do you have to tighten, and it starts at that bottom of that list. You tighten up those areas first, and sometimes you're going to shed things that you don't want to shed, and it's some of those times in my life, just very few times that has occurred. I'm there gut wrenching to make that kind of decision. So don't ever make them rashly. You might have some bad days where you're like, I'm out of here. But if you had that kind of demeanor, then you might want to rethink. I think the others have talked about this. You have to be ready that you got to stick it through. You're the chief figure outer, as Adam was talking about, as the term I was thinking of. You've got to figure it out, and you got to stay calm through the whole thing. Get worried later, but the firm needs somebody to see the thing through, whatever that thing is.
Yeah. And there's nothing I would add that wasn't already said, except that what keeps me coming back is that no 2 days are the same, right? And so it makes it really fun in lots of ways, because you mean we are chief figure outer, chief problem solver, chief diplomat, right? I have made a joke more than once that I have developed a skill set that would make me uh, attuned to a second career in the foreign service, right? Like, you have to exercise that level of diplomacy, but that variety really makes it fun and worth it for me, at least, right? Because I couldn't be in a role where I was doing the same thing over and over again, day in and day out. I'm just not wired that way. So,
Yeah, I think if you're looking for a job where it's consistent and you know what to expect every day, being in the C-suite is not the right role for you.
I think there's a good analogy to this, which um, recognizing that it's completely different in the field, but there's a new movie out with Rainn Wilson, Code 3, and it's about the paramedic world, which is something I tie back to a lot. And at the end, he tries to do the same thing. He was doing the same career for 15 plus years. He gets out of it for like a very short period of time, and he comes back and he says, the truth is, I don't really feel alive unless you're dying. And while that doesn't apply directly to us, the truth is, at some level, in order to be in this role, you have to sort of be a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, because you
Mhm.
do not know what you're walking into. You do know it's going to be stressful. You have to enjoy that level of getting pulled in 1,000 directions, managing people, managing processes, managing budgets, managing a ton of different things at any given time, being needed, being wanted, being called upon, being yelled at, being somewhat praised once in a while, to Jim's point, right? You don't always get a lot of it, but sometimes you get a little bit of it. We do this because we truly enjoy it. I mean, if you don't enjoy it, you wouldn't be here. You don't get
Mhm.
enough out of it without the enjoyment of it. I know personally, I don't do it because of the money. I don't do it because of the fame or all that stuff of the tropes that I guess you would use. I do because I enjoy it, because I make a difference. And like I said, I've tried to step away a couple times, but the reality is I come back because it's what I enjoy.
I think that adrenaline junkie thing is real. I used to say there's nothing that makes me feel more alive than standing in front of a room full of litigators explaining compensation. They love that.
oh,
Sounds fantastic. It
Yeah,
does.
it's
yeah.
awesome.
I gotta
Okay.
tell you, I'm feeling pretty good when stuff works. I mean, I'm good there. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you to our panelists for sharing their experience with leadership and the trials and tribulations of the C-suite. Thank you to our audience for joining us for So You Want to Join the C-Suite, where we go behind the title and inside the realities of law firm leadership. We'll be back next month for Chaos Theory, when leadership doesn't match the brochure, the disconnect between expectations and reality, and how to navigate it.